I'm gonna show you my best and easiest exercise for getting significant instantaneous improvements in fixing ribs that poke out on one side more than the other. Not only is this going to help us visually with our posture, but it's also going to help us with the function of our shoulder and our rib cage as a whole. When we have ribs that poke out on one side more than the other, what it usually means is that the ribs on the other side are depressed and down, which usually pulls that shoulder down with it. We call this rib cage internal rotation. So the ribs are down and in on this side, but they're more open on the side where there's more rib flare. What this is usually, but not 100% always indicative of, is that we have a posture of our sternum and our trunk that is turned towards the lower side, which would be the right side in this example right here. So if in my resting posture, normally I had a sternum that was relatively slightly turned towards the right side, I would expect to see a lower right shoulder, a rib cage that is more internally rotated and down on this side, and a rib cage that is more externally rotated and open on this left side right here. This gets fed every single breath we take because our body likes to take the path of least resistance in order to best survive. And breathing is obviously foundational for that. So if I can constantly open my left chest more than my right, I'm going to, every single breath I take, inflate my left chest more than my right. So in order to fix this, we want to reverse it. We want to be able to bring the rib cage on the left side, in this example, down while opening and facilitating expansion of the right ribs. This will in turn help also even out our shoulders a little bit, because as this right side gets inflated and this left side becomes relatively deflated, that's going to help bring the right shoulder up and the left shoulder down. If this explanation makes sense to you, check out my beginner body restoration program. It's designed to help address a lot of common postural and movement deficits and dysfunctions. The easiest way to get ourselves to close off these ribs on the side where there's more rib flare is to simply recruit the obliques and the deep abs, because these have attachments on our pelvis and also our rib cage. This helps bring us into a position where we get these things to come under us, as opposed to if I have rib flare on one side, usually the pelvis is rotated forward on that side too, into more of what we would think of as an anterior pelvic tilt. So what we want to be able to do is recruit those deep abs to help bring the rib cage down on that side, which will hold this down for expansion to occur on this side. The easiest way we could do that would be in a side plank position. So we're gonna get in this position where we have a 90-degree bend at both our knees and our hips, and we have this elbow of the downside directly stacked underneath that shoulder right there. So it's really important that we get into a palms up position here. But if you feel any wrist or shoulder pain doing that, you could go more neutral, as long as you're feeling this outer bone in your wrist right here in contact with the floor. So to initiate this, Trevor's going to push through the ground. He's going to go up, and he's going to feel probably a little bit turned towards the left side, the downside left side there. So as he breathes in through his nose and out through his mouth, he's gonna feel his left side abs engage more because they're working to hold him up here. But as he inhales, he's gonna feel his right side open up a little bit. And he's just gonna maintain that position as he goes through sets of breaths here. The progression here would be to add an overhead reach. So as Trevor goes up into the side plank position, he's gonna reach directly overhead, but not so far back behind him to where his ribs flare and extend. He wants to be, if anything, just a tiny bit in front of his head. And he just wants to let that arm hang out and chill. He doesn't want to be tensing to reach it overhead. You can let it just kind of relax. And now as you breathe in, you should feel some expansion alongside this right side even more. Finally, the last progression would be to push this top knee ahead of the downside bottom knee once you get into that side plank position, and that will help engage your inner thigh muscle on the downside and try to maintain that with those downside abs as well. I like to recommend people do this in sets of breaths rather than time, because the emphasis has to be on the breath. If we're just in this position and we're not breathing through it, we're not getting the expansion that we're looking for on the lower side, and we're not going to be able to further facilitate the closing off of this space with each exhale. So I like to program this for sets of quality breath cycles, usually in the range of about 5 to 8, depending on what you're capable of handling. After doing this for about 2 to 3 sets of 5 to 8 breath cycles, you should be able to stand up and notice a visible difference. If you did, smash that like button, and I hope to see you next time.